This episode is brought to you by Paintsville Tourism. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. Paintsville is located in the heart of the Country Music Highway on US 23 in eastern Kentucky. Come see why Paintsville is eastern Kentucky's city of note. Visit paintsvilletourism.com. This episode is brought to you by the Highway Artist Management Agency. We take pride in helping artists achieve their full potential. Visit us at highwaymgt.com. That's highwaymgt.com. If you're in the market for a new or pre-owned vehicle, try Pops Chevrolet. Pops Chevrolet will give you the best price guaranteed. Visit popschevy.com. P-O-P-S Chevy.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shed podcast.
I got a funny story.
Well, we'll be the judge of that, won't we?
Go ahead. We'll see how it goes. So I was working for Gary Morris, back when I used to come visit you at Famous.
Yep.
I was working for Gary Morris, running his publishing company. And we decided to go up to West Virginia to, what was that big outdoor festival that everybody went to? It was a huge outdoor festival. And anyway, we pull up in the bus, and the bus is sitting here, and we can see backstage, and we can see the stage, from the bus. And so Sammy Kershaw's on stage, and he's in the middle of double wide trailer, and there's a breakdown in the middle of it, and Sammy turns around and walks back to the backstage and punches the road manager right square in the face and knocks him out. I mean, knocks him clean cold out. I'm sitting there in the front of the bus kind of looking. I'm like, wow.
That's
and then he turns around.
Shit.
He turns around and comes back and starts singing just like nothing ever happened. And I was like, wow, he's got a temper on him. Wow. But is that, I mean, he hit this guy just right there, and just, the guy just laid there.
It's like Johnny Paycheck.
Probably a lot like that, yeah. Anyway, that's my story.
You had mentioned Tony Colton earlier, right?
Yeah. I signed him twice.
And I remember when he came back, he went overseas for a while, and I'm No Angel.
Yeah.
And he didn't know it had been released as a single. And he got back in, he said he got in and got a cab to come back, and it was playing, and he was like, man, that's my song. And the cab guys goes, that's the biggest record out right now, man, blah, blah, blah. He never had a clue.
Tony was one of my best friends. I signed him to Fame. I signed him to Hori Pro.
He was a great guy, man.
He was a great guy. And actually, I helped him sell his catalog before he passed away, which he very nicely paid me.
What's I'm No Angel? What song was that?
Greg Allman.
Greg Allman.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't place what it was for a minute. Yeah.
But Tony, he always called me Sonic. He was like, Sonic, I'm here. And I love little Tony, man. I love that guy.
Oh, him and Larry Henley together.
God. Tony told me.
That's the last time I saw him was at Larry's, when you and I were at Larry's memorial, with the anniversary of Larry's memorial.
Tony told me a story about him flying over to London, and he had taken he was coming back from London to L.A., and he had taken some PCP. And he's on this plane.
It's
and
not recommended for travel.
No. Yeah. And he's in the bathroom. He's locked himself in the bathroom, and he's like, there's a big stewardess and a little stewardess, and they're both banging on the door saying, you must come out. And he says, I won't come out. You must come out. I won't come out. And he's tripping his brains out. And it ended up being a whole thing, and he was never allowed to fly on Delta again.
Yeah, it happens.
You don't do PCP on an airplane.
No. It seems so clear. Looking backwards, it seems so logical.
Maybe a Greyhound.
Don't run from the cops, and don't do PCP on an airplane.
Maybe a Greyhound, but not an airplane.
Maybe a Greyhound.
A Greyhound. Absolutely.
Oh, you have to.
Yeah. That'd be frightening.
Harold, tell us a story.
No, I was going to ask you something. I'm going to ask Harold something. I got one. Because I'm curious about it from all of us. But any real regrets? You look back. I mean, I know your career's been really long because you were old when I met you.
My oldest friend.
Exactly. But anything you just go like, damn, I wish I'd have done that, or I wish I hadn't have done that you can tell.
Not really.
Sound like Kamala Harris. I can't think of any change.
Not really.
I don't see anything I would have changed.
Yeah. I have a guy ask me though. He said, if you could come back again and relive your life again, who would you want to come back as? And I said, hell, I'd like to be me again.
It wasn't a bad run at all, right?
Well, like I said, Harold, when I grow up, I want to be you.
Yeah, you know, only regret I have is I never got to make a record with George Jones.
Oh, my God. That would have been great.
I love George Jones so much, and I would have really considered it a great honor to have been able to produce a record on George.
Oh, yeah.
The opportunity, never presented itself, but that's the only regret I have.
When I was working for Keith Stegall, he cut a record on George.
Yes, a good one.
It was over in Berry Hill, and there was this cover over the front with these two bars that kind of connected to the building. And I was sitting in my office, and I could look out the front window, and George comes in, and he hits his head on this bar that's coming down, falls down, and breaks his arm.
Yep.
My goodness.
I remember.
I've never seen Keith Stegall move so fast in my life. I was like, Keith, we got a problem, man. And he's like, what? I said, George fell down. And he's like, get a blanket, cover him up. And we had to call and he came back and did vocals.
But remember what he said when you found him?
No.
Yeah. You might not have said this. You might have made it up when you told me the story the first
was
time.
it?
But what you told me was really funny because he said, oh, fuck, they're going to think I'm drinking again.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
At least it didn't happen on the studio floor, and you have to say, "We got a problem.
We got a problem.
You can't sing.
You can't.
Because you're on the floor. Yeah.
You can sing.
You know, I got a George Jones story. So I was working with Billy Ray. Don Von Tress and Billy Ray had worked, and Terry Shelton had worked on this record, and they asked me to help them when I had my studio at home. So Billy Ray had written this song called "Country Music's Got the Blues." It's not the same music anymore. It's the whole gist of the song, and so he wanted to get some of the older folks on. So he wanted to get Loretta and George and different people to come in and sing. So I had my studio set up in a little extra bedroom in the house off to the side. And it wasn't really big. Anyway, so George comes over that day to sing. We're playing down the track and everything, and he listens to the song. We talk about where he's going to sing, and it's Don Von Tress, Billy Ray, me, and Terry Shelton. Never Terry. So anyway, he gets to listen to the song. We were talking about what we want him to do, and I figured he's going to say something about the song. And he goes, "Boys," he said, "I only got one thing to say." So what's they said? "How do you like these jeans?" And we kind of looked at him. And he said, "Well, I'm just going to tell you, these are women's breeches." He said, "He's a little guy." He said, "They're cut different, He said, "They fit different." He said, "I like as much as I bought 16 par for my tour." And he said, "Look at this." And he pulled his shirt up, show how they fit around his waist and everything, And he talked about 20 minutes. And so we went in. He sang his part and left. And when he left, Billy Ray looked at me and said, "Dude," he said, "think about this for a second. You just had George Jones in the bedroom of your house wearing women's breeches." For a second. Because for Billy it's always the grand picture. The Crow called at 1:30 this morning, and George Jones had women breeches. What I mean? That's my George Jones story.
Oh, that's fantastic. They're women's breeches.
Yeah, it was.
Mark McGuinn.
Yeah.
There was a song, and we never got to it. The biggest song, I think, on the album, and it was called "Heaven Must Be Missing You."
Missing You, yeah.
And I thought that would have been
That would get a bit of a hit.
the one, but we didn't quite get there.
I think I go back and listen to that again.
Mark McGuinn,
I love Mark.
he was so talented.
Yeah, he used to stay at my house when he came to L.A.
I used to stay at my house when he came to Nashville.
When he came to Nashville.
And I signed another guy at Mercury about the time I was, taking the A train. And, his name was Mark Luna. And he was really talented also. We never got to exploit that part of Mercury. It would have been a great.
What kind of collection do you have, Harold? How many albums do you have?
How many? 30,000, I guess.
Wow.
You have 30,000 vinyl records?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I've seen a
cool.
picture of that room. There's where you got some of them.
Right. Wow.
Pretty cool.
It's a bunch.
That's a hell of a collection.
That's even more than he has antique cars.
How many?
Which is,
But
Not
my
only
question
vinyl.
Well, to
How
me,
many-
he's cut down a little,
how
to be
many of
fair.
those vinyl records did you cut?
well, some of them.
30,000.
Some of them. Yeah, some of them.
Yeah.
I
You ever
have,
go through
I
and look
have,
at yourself and go,
I have a good collection of all the stuff I did.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good collection.
Mel and
I'll bet. Well, I remember
Glenn and Shania and Toby and the Headhunters and Billy Ray,
Alabama,
Kathy Mattea, Alabama, Dobie. Yeah.
I remember at the mill when I was there, it became a problem because we were running out of wall space to put
Too many platinum
the
records.
multi-platinums. Remember, and then we did them all the way up the stairs. On
Yeah.
both sides. And we even went back into the back office. There was just, it's like Al's Custom Frames came twice a week and left a stack of shit. I'm not kidding, man. It was
I remember
one after
thinking
another.
by the time you got to Chuck's office, how low on the totem pole you had to be hanging at the end of that hallway. You know, some poor guy'd come to Nashville with everything, you know, in a $100 car, and he's reference to the first episode.
Yeah.
But the,
Well, you know, for most of the 80s, we
rocked it. I mean,
we were in the charts.
yeah,
we were in the
always, yeah.
I remember I was,
Shit, and 90s.
you know, I had
And the
that,
90s.
And
yeah.
that, right,
Yeah.
right.
I had that office that was the last one on the left, right over the mill, right?
Well,
I had
two decades, really.
Yeah.
that's a long damn time to be on the charts.
Yep.
But I had these big studio monitors in there, right? And so one day I'm highway to the danger zone. I think it just come out or something. I'm in between listening to songs. I'd always put
Listen
on
to
something
songs.
great,
A
you know,
palate
something good.
cleanser, if it were. Yeah.
Cleanse the palate, right? And I got it cranked. And I always look over at the door and I see it opening up, and it's Randy and Teddy.
Right.
They were in the-
You know, we should do at
bleeding
some
into there.
point, Russ. We should do a series or a segment on should have beens.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, could have beens.
Yeah.
Might have been.
Might have beens.
I got a bunch of should have beens. I know you do.
Mercedes Benz.
Mercedes Benz, yeah.
Should have never been.
Should have never been.
Yes. Never. Yeah, never been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we need to do that. We need to think about those for sure.
Yeah.
Leave James
Well,
Montgomery
we
out
had
of this.
we did a lot of really cool things that did not, for various reasons, not that they weren't given attention, but it takes the right people, you know, to do the things they do,
Right.
and sometimes just one person, if they drop out or
Changes the angle.
change position to something that it affects the entire project, as you know.
You did sides on Merle Kilgore, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
I remember that.
For
Boy, those
Warner
were
Brothers.
fun. Weren't he
Yeah,
was a,
I did some
Merle,
stuff
that was
on
another
it
one on my list. That was
for
true
Warner
character.
Brothers. That's
How do
right.
you think
How do you
I'm
think I'm
doing?
doing?
hey, baby.
He'd say, he'd call me up and go, Jason, would you like to go to the opera? I said, the opera? He's like, yeah, the Grand Ole Opera.
Oh, yes, yes.
You know, he'd put me in a limousine. We'd go out to the opera and, you know, just.
Jason, you ever been in the men's locker room?
I got some 8mm
Jason,
films
I have a
want
great
to show you.
story about that.
Please do.
Is that the Minnie Pearl story?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
my
please.
God.
Oh, yeah, do that.
Johnny Carson, the two most famous hillbillies to Johnny Carson was Mel Tillis and cousin Minnie Pearl.
Yeah.
They were both. Mel was on Johnny Carson 28 times
No kidding.
throughout his career, even hosted his show a week or two.
I remember that.
Johnny, he loved Mel, but
Yeah.
so did many, appear. And so one night, Ed McMahon introduced her and said, direct from the Grand Ole Opera in Nashville, Tennessee, it's cousin Minnie Pearl. And so she came out, and big hand, big applause, and she says, now, Johnny, before we get started, I must correct Mr. McMahon that it's not the Grand Ole Opera, it's the Grand Ole Opry.
Right.
And Johnny says, well, Minnie, what's the difference? And she says, well, opera is culture, and the Opry is agriculture.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's so good.
That was Merle, man. He Jason, you want to go to the opera?
Yeah.
I remember when I was
I fell for it the first time.
one of my first jobs in Nashville. I was a tour guide for Opryland and drive one of those buses.
Was it
right?
Operaland or Opryland?
Opryland. And but we drive down, and where Millsap's place was over here, Minnie lived right next to him.
Yep.
Off of what is that? Wedgewood turns into whatever it is.
Was on Franklin Road.
Yeah, Franklin Road.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, she would come down to the dang bus because I met her one day. She was out, and I just rolled the window down, and I said, "Hi, Miss Pearl," and she said, "Well, you beat the horn, I'll come out here." Well, man, it made my tips triple.
yeah.
Right? And she'd come up on the thing and yell, "Howdy,"
No,
and
wow.
then wave and go back off. But man, that was one of the coolest things. She had no
That's
reason
cool.
to do that.
Nope. You
She
honked
didn't
the
know me
horn.
from Adam, but she said you were so nice the first time, because I was doing my test run before I had to do it. And she just happened to be out there, and I told her I just started doing it and everything. And
Wow.
every time I'd come by and beep, if she's home, she'd come down. And man, the people on there, they just go crazy. Of
course.
And to be honest, Chuck did not sleep with Minnie Pearl.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Some of you guys.
It has to be said.
Another, and then I'll give somebody else the mic.
No.
But one other funny thing that happened one night. I was working with Mel, and he owned a radio station in Texas at the time, Abilene, and so there was a big show for the radio station, and his brother Richard Tillis was driving the bus. So the show's over, we all get on the bus, and got about a 12 or 14 hour drive to Mel's working the next night. You know how that goes. And Breadman, we call Richard Breadman, because he used to drive a Merita bread truck. So he wasn't Richard.
Mel's brother, yeah.
Mel's brother, yeah.
Better than we could call Dick.
And there's a great Breadman story, but I can't tell you that. But he had a little jump seat right beside where he drove the bus, and he wanted someone at all times to sit there and talk to him or listen to him, and he would tell you, say, "My boy, have a seat. 4 hours right here with the old bread man is like 4 years at any major university."
You've graduated.
He didn't say equivalent, he said equivalent.
Equivalent.
Yeah. And then there's and bread. You pulled over, and the highway patrol came up, and he opened the door, and Breadman says, "What's happening, my boy?" And the guy says, "Well, I'll tell you what's happening. You're running 85 miles an hour and a 35 miles long.
In a bus.
Richard said, let me wake up the chiefy weefy. So Mel's asleep in the back of the bus, and he brings him up, and Mel's, well, officer, what's happening? He said, well, what's happening is you're going 85 miles an hour and a 35 miles long. And Mel said, that can't be right. And he said, well, why can't it be right? He says, this bus won't run an hour.
Oh, there you go. This bus won't run a whole hour.
That's funny.
That was the wit of Mel, man.
Yeah.
He was.
That can't be right.
That can't be right.
Those were good old days.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
man. What was the story you were talking about last night?
Harold, tell them about your migration from selling ads to Key West radio station to the Pontiac car.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good story.
Well, that was quite a trip.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. Well, I started out at WTLS in Tallahassee, Alabama, a little town east of Montgomery. Mm-hmm. And I worked there. A friend of mine worked there regularly, and he said, "Hey, Ace, I got something to tell you." He said, "We need a weekend guy if you don't mind working Saturday and Sunday." I was looking for a job because I had a band, was not making any money, so I said, "Well, I don't mind working on Saturday and Sunday. Hell, I do that now, And so I took the job, and then pretty soon I was doing okay, and got to where I could write a 60-second commercial or a 30-second, and pretty good disc jockey, and knew a little bit about music and songs because I grew up, singing and playing. So as it all progressed, they built a station in Talladega, and then they bought another station in Macon, Mississippi, and I'd go to wherever they send me because I could do all these things, I could, and by some methods, I was like a manager because I'd just go in and get it all working the way it was supposed to, and I was doing that, and one night I was on the air, and I never played sports, but I was doing a play-by-play football game. And so about halfway through the broadcast, a gentleman called me and says, "Man, I really like the way you doing these ball games." And I said, I didn't have the balls to tell him I never had done a game before. It was my first thing. But I said, "Well, I'm on the air right now. I can't talk to you right now." He said, "Well, write this number down." He says, "My name is Bill Bridges, and I run the station in Pontotoc, Mississippi." And this, as it turned out, that was part of Mr. Hook's chain of stations. Long story short, I called him the next day, and he wanted to hire me, so I went to work for that organization. And as it turned out, you could only own 14 stations then, and they had 13, and we're going to build a station in Key West, Florida. But it was a directional array. It's a 3-tower. So every disc jockey had to have a first-class engineering license, and I didn't have that. So he says, "Well, you need to meet the big boss, Mr. Hook, and I'm sure he'll work you out a job at one of the stations. But we want you to join our organization. We like what you do." And so I did. And he says, now, I was working in Mississippi at the time because of people I had been working for. You know, they were buying up all the stations you could own at the time. So he said, I want you to go to Key West and run that station. And I said, well, I don't have a first-class license. I can't work at a directional setup like that. And he said, well, we're going to send you to school to get a license. And I said, you know, I can't afford to go to school. I got to work every week. He says, no, I'm going to send you to school, and I'm going to pay for it, and you're going to work for me 4 years to pay for your schooling. So he did. He sent me to a place called Elkins Institute of Electronics in Dallas, Texas. And I went, that was late 48, 1948, early 59. And the first guy I met, I had never met him before, but was, you remember a guy named Eddie Kilroy?
Of course.
Yeah, did all of Mickey Gillis stuff.
Yeah. Playboy Records.
Ran Playboy when they
Records, that's
opened
right.
here, and did, what's her name, Barbie Benton.
Yep.
Right.
And a guy, I'm the only hell my mama ever raised, the original writer. What was his name?
I know this.
Not Joe's son, but
I know this.
well, anyway,
Not Joseph.
Eddie did a lot of records while he, you know, that was his thing. So he was in school, and we became really good friends. And he was rodeoing at the time. He was a bull rider. And Eddie was quite a guy, really. And his real name is David Jones, but when he got into radio, he became Eddie Kilroy. I don't know why that.
Really?
Yeah. And so I graduated, and when I left the school to go to Key West, David, as I knew him, was still rodeoing and had not passed all the exams, you know, and stuff, because he was a outdoors guy. And I went on to Key West, and this 1959 by then. So I started working at WKIZ, and I worked 59, 60, 61, and part of 62.
Wow.
And I paid back all the money that I had, you know, been given to go to school, and had a first class ticket. So I was really sitting, you know, in a good spot. I could go get a job anywhere then, because I could do all these things. I could write a commercial, or I could sing a commercial,
Right.
or, you know, I could do a disc jockey's job, or I could read news and all these things.
Football.
Yeah, football.
Yeah.
Football. Yeah.
Perfect program manager.
You know,
Right.
you know, I never did another football game.
So that was your best one.
That was my only one.
That was the best one.
Yeah, that was not my cup of tea.
Sounds like our quarterback at Titans. Go ahead.
So all of this happened, and then early '82, the little radio station in my
62.
hometown
62.
came up.
62.
I'm sorry, 62. My little radio station came up for sale, so I moved back to Bremen, where I'm from, and bought this station and ran it for 8 or 9 years, 8.5 years, and sold it. And my wife and I had a son, so there was a station in White Castle, Louisiana, south of Baton Rouge, on the west side of the river. It was right on the Mississippi River. And, well, Baton Rouge, Plaquemine, and then White Castle, about 10 miles apart. And I bought the station and the call letters. Everything west of the Mississippi is with a K.
Yep.
And it was
Absolutely.
KEVL.
Was W or K?
Yeah, W on that one side, K on the other. That's right. And except when they first began, all of them were W's, and there were only 3 letters, like WSM,
Oh yeah.
WSB in Atlanta, WWL New Orleans,
Yep.
WLS in Chicago,
Yeah.
WNY in New York, and with a few exceptions, they didn't issue all that many licenses in the beginning. So so I got to trying to figure out a way to make the station more successful, and it was, if you cross the river from KEVL, you're real close to KLSU College.
LSU.
So I researched that, and the college didn't have a radio station, so I applied to the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, and I got granted call letters KLSU.
Really?
Yeah, and so I started programming rock and roll and different kinds of some R&B, and I had a guy that was the commercial manager, and he was a local guy. His name was Terry Broussard, he's dead now, but we became really successful, so much that I was able to start broadcasting Texas baseball and football and all this stuff. So I sold all the games one year to the Pontiac dealer. You met John, my buddy John. He just died, by the way.
Oh, no.
And his brother was named Schott, and they had bought the Pontiac dealership about the time I bought the radio station. So they were advertisers, and I went to them and made a deal, and they gave me a new Pontiac, and I was going to run commercials throughout the season that the games were being played, and you had to register to win this Pontiac, and so it was really, really going well, except when it came time to do the big deal, which was to draw for the car. Somebody's going to win the car.
It's like a lottery.
Broussard, Terry, had fixed the contest with his brother-in-law, who lived in Covington, Louisiana. And so, well, this guy won the car, or he got the car, and then someone found out about it, and that didn't go well.
That's not good.
And so, long story short, I went to sign on one morning at 6 o'clock, and you've heard of being padlocked? There was this chain and this gigantic lock on the front door, and a note from the Federal Communications Commission.
Oh, the FCC came down.
Do not enter, and all this.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, call this number. Well, I had questions. So, long story short.
Holy God.
Well, I did have some questions.
Yeah, it didn't turn out well. And they padlocked it, and as a result of that, I actually lost the license.
Did you really?
Yeah. So that was a great.
Who ended up with the car?
You know, I don't know.
I bet the federal government has it
So
somewhere.
let me ask you a question.
But let me say
Okay,
this.
go ahead.
I don't know if any of you guys have ever been involved with legally things connected to the federal government or not.
Not a good place to
But
be.
man, when they put you on the witness stand, they put me on there for about 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
I mean, when I was really, really worn out.
Yeah.
Wow.
I believe it.
They grilled
I
you.
was ready to get the hell out of there.
Oh, yeah.
you know, and wound up, you know, I just left it all,
Walked away.
everything, walked away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Station going, everything's going.
Yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
you'll love this too. I don't think I told you this. When I was in Bremen, when Pepper Tanner started, who was at that time the biggest jingle company
Right.
in existence, they were on like 40% of all the radio stations.
Wow.
And there were 800 or 900 stations, and they were on 40% of those. And I had met Bill, and who later went to prison also.
Right.
But he says, if you ever need a job, come see me in Memphis. Just, I don't know why he said that, but he did. And so I got to thinking about that.
Yep.
And Faye, my wife and I, we moved to Jackson, Mississippi. And I told Faye, I says, Monday I'm going to go to Memphis. And she says, why are you going to do that? I said, well, I think I can get a job. And so I went and saw Bill Tanner. I said, well, his assistant, you know, his secretary says he's not able to talk to you or meet with you right now, and if you could come back. I said, ma'am, I can't come back. I live in Jackson. I can't just, you know, do that. And I said, here, this is my name and my number. Just take it and give it to Bill, and I think he might see me. She did, and he come out and brought me on there.
Really?
I said, yeah. And he said, well, if I ever need a job, I said, here I am. And I swear to God, he looked at me and he said, you're hired.
What do I do?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And he gave me a new Chevrolet Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And a briefcase full of tapes and records, and they had a production library, you know, with open-end jingles and stuff on them, and supplemented that every month. And so I started selling all that stuff to radio stations.
Wow.
What a story, man.
Yeah.
That's-
Wow. That's
It was
amazing.
great. And that's how I met Scotty. I met Scotty in Huntsville, Alabama one night at a place called the Jet Star Club. It had a really great band. They were brothers, the Mitchell brothers. Price Mitchell was an incredible singer. Nelson and I brought him to Nashville. That was the first
Nelson
recording session
Yeah.
ever did. With Scotty Moore. He had
Scotty Moore.
he was on 19th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Music City Recorders, I
Yeah,
believe it
that's
was
what it was.
called.
Yeah.
And so we cut this record on Price. Didn't do anything, but it was a great record because Johnny Russell covered it, and it
Johnny
was a
Russell.
#1 record for
Whoa.
him. So we knew we were on the right track.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what to do, you know.
Right.
So that's how all of that started.
I got a question for you. I'm dying to ask you. So the station's doing well down there. You're rocking. What was guy's name? The guy that
Terry Broussard.
Terry Broussard. So you guys do the drawing. Everybody's excited. You're friends with the dealer who I met, the car dealer. All these years you've been friends. Great friends with him. Everything's going great. He's doing good. You're doing good. And they do the drawing. And they said, "Oh, look, it's my brother-in-law." Did you know it was his brother-in-law?
No, we didn't know who it was.
When did you find out that it was his brother-in-law?
Well, his brother-in-law told somebody, and then who told
He let it
somebody?
out.
Friend of
And
a friend.
of a friend.
So the winner of the drawing, when it happened, You didn't have any idea that was this guy's brother. Okay.
No.
And then he couldn't keep his mouth shut about guess
Right.
what we did.
That's what I didn't know. Yeah.
That's
So I'm
funny.
thinking you go, oh no.
Yeah. Me and Chucky won some tickets to a concert
Oh,
one
my
I
time.
had a great life. I love radio. I had a great life in radio, and even counting all the bad times. But it actually, guys, it helped me a lot in the record business because when I was in radio, I selected whatever I played, and I could play whatever I wanted to.
Yep.
Because.
Right.
That's the way it was.
Yeah, right.
There were no consultants.
They had
and
real
nobody,
DJs.
Nobody to tell you anything
Yeah.
except
programming.
get your ass to
Man.
work.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so
Was Bobby Braddock down there working in the station down? He was a DJ for a long time too, down in this little.
In Florida?
He may have been in Florida.
I think he was in Florida. He was in Central Florida. He's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah,
close
he
to
was in-
Lakeland.
the only
Yeah.
place I ever worked in Florida was Key West.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Bobby
Now, in
probably
a little different back then.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, I worked in Jackson and Forest, Meridian, and Canton, and Belzona. Belzona.
Haven't been.
That happens to be the old radio station in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
With the blind guys.
Oh yeah.
That's Belzona's old radio station.
Oh my gosh.
My boss and his company built that station. I thought that was interesting when I saw that movie.
Bobby told me a story one time about when he was down in Florida and he was working at this radio station. And it's, just those cinder block buildings, with a big antenna on top of it. And it was on the Sunday morning show. He was on the air and he'd covered up the windows, in case anybody came in. He was sitting there looking at a Playboy and he had the microphone on and he was kind of, doing his thing. And all of a sudden people
That
started...
reminds me when you get through.
People started calling and going, you're
Sounded
kind
a
of
little weird there.
sounded kind of funny. He was like, he thought he was just playing music, but he had a mic on, and he was doing his thing, and then he got fired.
Yeah. Yeah, to get you going.
Well, that's really hard.
Yeah.
No doubt.
What's that?
In
What's the story?
this little station in Bremen, when I owned it, everybody advertised. I would, like Monday morning, I would go around to all the people on this side of town and see what they wanted to, change the copy, rewrite, and do the commercials for them and all that. And I was in, we had a guy that worked at the post office, and he was one of those civil defense guys. He had that helmet and had one in the back window of the car right,
cherry on top
right
of
next
it.
to that little Hawaiian girl doing it. And so he was a trip, His name was Moose Morris, and Moose is dead now. But he came in one morning. I was there talking to the guy that owned the dry cleaner. His name was Louis McPherson, and we were talking, and a couple other guys from a business next door came in, and we were all just BSing, and Moose came in and started putting all of these invoices down on Louis McPherson's desk. You talk about a small town. This fixing to show you what a small town. And so Louis said, Moose, all you left me here is a bunch of damn window envelopes. That's what he called them, window envelopes. He said, where's my Playboy magazine? And Moose says, Louis, I've got it at the house. I'll bring it to you.
Did I forget to bring that? Oh my
That's small town. Man.
Yeah, small town. Where's my Playboy?
I've got it at home. I'll bring it to you tomorrow.
Might be a little used.
So many radio stories, though. Like I said, my dad was a program director at WJCO Radio, right? And go back to Roger, because Roger liked my dad. So when he came through, like doing Detroit, Lansing, or whatever, he'd always go and do it with my dad, right? And so they're sitting there. My dad tells a story about they're sitting there, and Roger goes, "Hey, can I sign us off?" And he goes, "Yeah." Well, they always had the red button, but it's 5 minutes of dead air time, right? If you hit the emergency button, right? And Roger says, "Well, hi, folks. Thank y'all for listening in. This is Roger Miller, WJCO Radio, and we're flat broke." And man, hits that button, 5 minutes of dead air time, and my dad said it seemed like 4 hours before it came out.
And we're dead.
Flat, bro.
Oh, that's great.
That is.
But it was a cool old place. I remember they had wrestling Saturday mornings. They'd have the big time wrestling in the basement of the thing, and like. Since my dad was program director, I could walk around anywhere I wanted. So I could never figure. I'm like, they hate each other out there, but they're hanging out together back here. What? This must be fake.
Really?
But, oh my God!
You know,
Bobo,
one of the
Brazil,
cool things, guys, especially being a publisher, this is before computers.
Yeah.
So every 3 months, for 30 days, you had to fill out a sheet from BMI and
Log
ASCAP
sheet.
and CSAC, and you had to list the record you played, who wrote it, who published it, who sang it,
Who wrote it?
and how long it was. Yeah, the writer, all that, because that's how they got paid back then. They didn't have any other way to
They wanted a
track it.
spreadsheet to do it.
So really, the radio stations tracked all of that for BMI and ASCAP back then. ASCAP was mostly popular music, and BMI, Broadcast Music Incorporated, was actually started by the Association of Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ASCAP.
BMI, Broadcast Music and Storeway.
BMI.
Yeah. And CSAC was mostly gospel music then.
I had a favorite disc jockey when I was growing up in West Virginia. His name was Super Duper Charlie Cooper.
Super duper
Man,
Charlie.
I'd listen to that guy every day. He played great music.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Same here. We
That
had
was
one
in
too.
Charleston.
Louisville.
I
Weird
had
Beard.
some-
We were talking about this last night. The Weird Beard. Everything I ever heard cool in Louisville, Kentucky growing up was from the Weird Beard.
Weird
It'll be
beard.
AKY.
Yeah.
Arthur Penhowell on WRIL.
Yeah.
Baby. That was his big deal. That was Merle
Isn't that
Kilgore.
funny? Yeah, man. That's funny.
Radio was a big factor. It's going away. We're doing a podcast, not radio.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't say any of this on the radio.
No, you can't. That's true.
No, you can't.
Well, you could say it one time.
Exactly. It's like, I'll be damned, it's like giving away a Pontiac. You can only do it once.
I had an old boss of mine that used to say, you can do anything on your last day.
On the last day, that's exactly right.
That's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
That's
What was
great.
the story about you guys winning the concert ticket?
Well, back to close quarters. A lot of stories started there, but there was a new radio station in town, and it did not last very long. Was that WSA or WUA?
Yeah.
Something like that. But they were around, and that was early '80s.
What was his name, the DJ?
I know I can see his face, but I can't
Smokey
remember his
something
name.
or something.
Yeah, you're getting.
But
there.
he just tells Brian on the thing, hey, we're giving these tickets away.
The funny thing is, I was working for Buddy Leach.
That's right.
He'd
Doing
hired
t-shirts
me to sell T-shirts and jackets and stuff to artists.
You're doing merch?
And so I was like, he manufactured and printed T-shirts and all that stuff. And his wife at the time, Ruth Ann or something like that, she was on Channel 4. She was like the anchor on Channel 4. And Buddy, it was funny because Buddy, you always kind of got the feeling that Buddy basically had a company, so he had somewhere to go during the day.
It was Ruth Ann Leach.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Ruth Ann.
Ruth Ann Leach. And so
I remember. I
and
knew
her
Ruth
husband,
Ann.
Buddy, hired me.
Yeah.
People have made this mistake for decades where they would hire me thinking
Wasn't
I'd be
he
a
a
good
bass
salesman.
player? Oh,
He probably was
Yeah.
based on his business acumen. I'd say probably a
Yeah, I
bass
think he
player.
was a
could have
bass
been a
player,
drummer, yeah.
no metronome.
Yeah, he was no metronome. But so he hired me, and so I was sitting at my desk at Buddy's place working. I was supposed to be working. And I was listening to the radio, and they said they're giving away tickets to a concert. So I called and won, legitimately. And so I won 2 tickets. I got back. Chuck, on the other hand, he just randomly in the middle of his program said, our winner's Chuck Bedwell, blah, blah, blah. And so he got 2. Then they had a grand prize at the end.
And we won that.
And somehow we won
How did that happen?
And that was a limo. And that day became infamous in our crowd because so a limo comes to pick us up. We haven't got 2 nickels to rub together. Honest to God, we're putting quarters in a can to buy beer, you know. So somehow or another we got like a case of beer between 4 of us or more. I don't know. I don't remember even who I was in the car, but and we got a limo. Turns out it was Charlie Daniels' limo and driver.
Oh no!
And so
but it was the Oak Ridge Boys that were playing.
It was Statler Brothers.
Statler Brothers,
even and Brenda Lee.
That's
and so
right.
in Cookville. So this limo comes to pick us up, and we get in this limo. And like I said, we ain't got no money, and we're going to this thing, and we thought, well, it's all going to be free anyway. So we get in this limo, pulls out of our place on Blair Boulevard, and takes our asses to Cookville. You know, by the time we got to Cookville, we had finished off the bottle of whiskey and the case of beer, and we're in no shape to hang out with the people backstage. And so here come the big radio station winners of this big promotion. And it's me and Chuck and like maybe Mule and Doug Kreider. I remember maybe it's Bonner. I don't know who was with us. But we were just, we were the kind of drunk they do in television shows to make a point.
Well, you saw them get out the camera, and then they kind of thought about it, and they put the camera away. They didn't put a picture of the winners.
And then Brenda Lee standing there, and and Chucky is like just slurring, cussing, left-handed. So he walks up to Brenda Lee and starts talking about how my dad and all this kind of stuff, They were like really lovingly and kindly with machine guns escorted us because the National Guard was providing security.
Yep.
And they escorted us out of this
They put our ass back in the limo and said, have a good time.
Back to the limo and sent us out. So we thought, well, hell, we've got the limo.
We might as well.
We still got 4 hours of limo time, right? Yeah. So we talked to the driver and talk him, and he stops in Mount Juliet on his way back and picks up his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right.
And gets his girl. We had to close quarters in the limo. But we still don't have any money, so Mosley wrote a check.
I was going to say, somebody wrote a check.
Somebody wrote a check. Mosley had a magic checkbook.
Yeah.
His mother had given him a checkbook. We're on college, in case there was an emergency. And we had the damnedest run of bad luck in close quarters. We had an emergency after emergency. And so we got there, and that was the night. I remember Jeff Mosley had invented a drink that was the worst drink anyone has ever had. Called the Suez.
Yeah.
He called it the Suez. So you'd get a glass, fill a pint glass with ice, put a shot of whiskey and then lemon or lime or something, and fill it up with draft beer and mix it together. And it was terrible.
This is great.
But after about 3, it didn't matter.
Yeah, after about 3, it didn't matter.
He didn't
and I
taste
remember
anything.
we're all sitting out in the
courtyard.
We're in the glass greenhouse. We're sitting in the greenhouse, and there's some normal people sitting behind us trying to have dinner, and we are loud and drunk and horrible. And he takes his Suez, and he starts drinking. And him and the chair and the drink and everything just goes straight back into this couple that are trying to have dinner. But he doesn't spill a drop.
Nope.
He holds their cup and says,
Got it?
Didn't spill a drop. And he looked at those people. I swear, he looked right up at me. He says, my fault. Not yours.
Not yours.
Not yours. It's like, as if there was any doubt.
No.
But yeah, we did. So we did. We scammed a radio station and got kicked out of a Brenda Lee Statler Brothers concert.
And went to close quarters.
Oh
my God.
It was a classic 80s day. I don't remember.
And
there was trouble.
And you wrote a bad check.
No, there was a good check.
Jeff did.
Oh, it was a good
wasn't,
check. Oh, was it yours?
Remember the people that were the people in the limo. Remember the people that were making the documentary?
Oh my God.
How did I hook
Winnie
this?
Danker.
Didn't I hook that up?
Winnie
somehow?
Danker.
I
Winnie
forgot.
Danker,
Winnie Danker
was theoretically, and we still don't know to this day if it's true, a journalist from Life magazine.
That's right, Life
that
magazine.
was going to do an article about Muscle Shoals.
Yep.
So I met her, I think at close quarters.
I don't remember.
And then I called Russ, right? Where was it?
It was close.
Is it?
quarters,
Okay.
But she
And,
wasn't what she said she was.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure. But she was a lot of other things. And so
How did we get that limo though?
you got one of your buddies in Muscle Shoals had a funeral home. So we run.
That's right.
You know, instead of getting a limousine, we got a family car and came up and picked up this woman. We thought she was a journalist from Life magazine,
No.
so we picked her up, and
And it
me
was
and
an
Russ,
old beat-up limo,
and she had
wasn't it?
some assistant traveling with
Yeah.
her, and it was an old beat up family car
She
from the
hung
funeral
out for a
home.
long time.
She hung around, and so then we went
Friend
down.
of a friend.
friend
Oh
of
my
a
God.
friend.
We took her down. Now we went to Muscle Shoals and we showed her around and did all the stuff like that. She chased me around that cabin. I thought that the guy she was with was her boyfriend, and so
No,
I was
that's
trying
her
to
brother.
behave, but it was he was used to whatever shenanigans she was up to. But she chased me around that cabin like I thought. Honestly, it was frightening.
Uncle Ed.
Yeah,
Winnie
but
Danker.
that was Winnie Danker. I'll never forget that name.
I won't either. I know exactly who you're
I remember
talking
taking
about.
her all the studios and stuff,
Oh,
and
yeah.
muscle shows and everything.
Y'all really shopped that around, huh?
Yeah, we had a great time.
God, she never wouldn't go away.
No,
I mean, serious. She hung out there like day and night, and it was
Yeah.
like, what do you do?
well, we never did find out any details on what she
No.
did. I know some things she did, but I don't think they were professional.
So she,
They felt
maybe
so
they
you're-
could have been
so you're saying
professional.
She caught you.
She caught me. Oh, yeah.
She chased you around.
Can
and
only
caught
run
you.
so far, so long.
Ryan's not
I will
fast.
say, by the time she caught me, we were at the Hermitage Hotel. There,
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, just to be
At least
clear.
you upgraded.
Yeah. Hey, you take me to the Hermitage. I mean, I have to be friendly.
I'm not sure they were professional. They felt damaged.
She just wanted a massage.
But I mean, we took her in a family car. We took her funeral car. We were so cool.
Russ got
Oh,
a
my God.
funeral car.
But yeah, we might as well have brought the hearse.
That's the best I could do.
It was the best we could pull together. And I remember who it was that owned it, but he came with her. He
I
drove it.
forgot who it was. It was some friend
Yeah.
of mine down there.
Oh, my
I don't know who it was anymore. It's been so long
It's
ago.
amazing that we went from that to anything.
I know.
Right? I mean, it's like
Ever.
that we started out where we started out and how we did it, and it's amazing that any of us ever amounted to
Actually,
anything.
he kind of did it all.
Except him.
He did it all.
Yeah, I know. He's just
When
like
did you
that.
decide to flip from radio to making records and owning a label and a publishing company? I mean, how did that process go? You know, where you're working radio and you're owning radio stations, and then you decide, I'm going to just make records now.
Jingles.
Well, I guess the jingles is a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really came to Nashville. I had, given up on the artist part of it, and
Right.
so Scotty wanted to start a
Yeah.
jingle company, so I did. And I had actually had met Nelson. This is going back
Yeah.
when Ramada Inn was on.
Oh, yeah.
James Roberts,
Yes,
Yeah. Jake,
yeah.
back in the old
And RCA
DJ.
always had their disc jockey big event there.
Yeah.
DJ
So-
week.
I met Nelson at that event, and we kind of became friends. Nelson was a great guy,
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
and we had a lot of fun together. I used to call and get him out of the house, call for Nelson, Mary Louise.
Harold's calling.
Well,
back.
I said, well, I really need him to meet me in Memphis, and so I'd get him out of the house, and we'd go down the street to the King's Inn or
Uh-huh.
the Jet Star Club, and we'd meet Scotty there. And so it just kind of grew from that, and then Nelson was involved in the jingle company we started. He and I and Scotty were the primary guys in that. Scotty was an incredibly
We're pushing your
generous
mic in
man and a cool guy.
Yeah.
Scotty was, and that was. So, what was the first record you made that,
Made some noise.
that was properly distributed and all that sort of thing?
My home's in Alabama.
That was the very
No,
first
was
one.
it?
Wow.
What did you run?
That's a reasonably good start.
No. How'd that turn out?
That was a good start.
Son.
It's like I want to hold your
That,
hand.
it was a good start.
Well, I started out hitting hole in one. So
Yeah.
It went uphill from there.
Yeah.
Was Alabama and Myrtle Beach at that time
Yeah.
when you found that?
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen?
Well, there was a company in town that you guys will know called Nationwide Sound.
Yes.
And they distributed all the independent product that could not get a major distributor. There was, like Russ was saying earlier, there were only two, Handelman and what was the other
Anderson.
one? Anderson.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have money and were an independent label, they really didn't want to talk to you, So this Nationwide Sound was owned by Joe and Betty Gibson. And they had one employee, and his name was Jimmy. He wrote a hit. What was his name? Payne.
Jimmy Payne.
Jimmy Payne. And he worked there. And I was trying to do what you're talking about. I was trying to make some records.
Yeah.
And so Betty Gibson, Alabama had put out a song called I Want to Come Over. And it was about 30-something in the charts. And she called me, Betty did, and says, I think you might want to look at this band. We got a record out on them, and radio seems to really like this band. And she told me about it, and that's how I met Alabama in the beginning. Was through Betty
Really?
and Joe Gibson. Yeah.
I always loved the story about, because they were, what was it called? Before Alabama, it was Wild Country.
Wild
right?
Country.
that's
And then
right.
they were playing the Boundary in, South Carolina or
Myrtle
whatever, and it had all the states.
The Bowery.
The Bowery.
Bowery,
Yeah, and it had all the states carved out of wood. Since they were from Alabama, they took and put the wooden one over their
That's
when
right.
they were playing, and so that's how they became,
became the
Alabama.
name,
That's what we're called now.
The Alabama band.
Right.
They
that
were.
was
Alabama band.
But
And then when
Pretty cool story, I
RCA
like that.
signed them, Jerry Bradley, we had, My Home's in Alabama was out, and it was going up the charts. It didn't go to 1, but it got top 10, and it played like a number 1,
a long
and
time.
sold like a number 1.
Yes, it did.
And so Jerry Bradley called me and said, hey, come over to the office. I want to talk to you. So I did. And he says, I think I want to sign this band. And I said, okay. And he said, well, what's the deal? What kind of money will it take to, And I said, well, I'd like to recoup. I've been paying for all of this myself. I did the album out of my pocket. I had $25,000 and some change in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
new Cadillac.
well, he said, well, what if I give you $40,000 and then $50,000 to do the next record? And I said, well, that sounds pretty good.
We can talk.
Yeah, that's better than what I got right now.
Yeah.
And then, but after, that record, it came out in '82, and I think in 3 or 4 months it was gold.
Wow.
And so then we did the Feel So Right album for $50,000, and it sold like 4 million.
Yeah.
And And
Trying to
so
recoup that, didn't they?
he called me and he said, I want you to make me some more records. And I said, okay,
You got a job.
what about the budget? He said, spend whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that was it.
We'll let you know if you're right.
You got catering and everything, didn't you?
He recouped pretty quick, I'd
Finally
say.
able to order out for lunch.
Yeah.
Bradley Jerry Bradley was the key to all of that. He made,
Wow.
and Joe Galani was head of marketing at that time
right.
at RCA.
What was the
And Benny, Benny Shipley worked at Metropolitan Country. What was that station? W. Not WSM. The other station.
Oh,
Oh man, what the hell?
you got me on that.
Downtown here in Nashville?
In Nashville, Metropolitan.
98.6. What is
It
that?
would have been
What's
SIX.
Jerry House? What's that?
WSIX?
Yeah,
SIX.
WSI.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So, well, Benny worked there, and he was playing the record, and his wife Sheila worked for Tony Brown at RCA.
Sheila Shipley?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
So-
Ken Biddy and Sheila
That's
Shipley.
before
yeah.
Ken.
yeah,
Before
Ken,
Ken
yep.
Biddy?
no, after.
After
Oh,
Ken?
it was, okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, no, before.
Before Ken, yeah.
Yeah, before him. Yeah.
Wow.
And they were really instrumental in it, in that they loved the band so much, and so I had gone to Myrtle Beach and met with Randy, and we'd done all the stuff we could do, and it was happening, and they started really doing. They started booking, and booked a lot of dates early on for not a lot of money, but actually honored all those dates. Mm-hmm. They didn't when they were getting $100,000 a night. They still played those $10,000 nights.
Right.
That
Commitment.
So,
But they took over the concession.
and they became,
they became
well. They
massive.
opened the doors
Yeah.
for all those bands
That's what
Yeah.
I'm
in the
saying.
'80s and '90s. Had it not been for Alabama, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be.
You could go-
Restless Heart,
Restless Heart,
Exile,
Little Texas,
Lone
Exile,
Texas.
Lone Star.
Yeah.
came
But you,
along.
you
Lone Star.
recorded.
Sawyer Brown.
Yep.
Sawyer Brown.
But you
Well, I don't know if there's any excuse for that.
Let me jump around a little bit.
Well, Diamond Rio.
They were good.
But you recorded that first album at the old music mill. That
Yeah.
first at Mahomes in Alabama album.
First,
And
I recorded the first three albums there.
At the
and
old
they
music.
played on the first record.
I'm sorry.
They all played on the first record.
Yeah, they played on all the records.
Okay.
Yeah. All I ever did,
Yeah.
Wow.
in addition to other players.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would have been the revenue on $4 million in record sales back then?
I'm sorry.
What would have been the revenue on $4 million in record sales back then?
They were probably wholesale then were $4 or $5.
Yeah.
Wow.
6 3/4 back then.
Yep.
Yeah. Between $20 and $30 million to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then there was, but Alabama really got insanely rich touring. I mean, their manager was very clever.
Was that Dale?
Yeah, and
Dale
Dale
Morris?
I remember he came to me about buying part of that one time when I was at Disney. And, I don't remember where they were. They were like playing at the Ontario Speedway or something like that. So we went out to the Ontario or something and met with him, talked about it a little bit, and it was a little too rich for our blood at the time.
What do you want to buy?
I think he was selling whatever they owned publishing wise.
Oh, I see.
But and that was interesting to talk about. But what was really interesting to talk about was how much money they would make playing a state fair, because they would take the full gate of the day they were playing the state fair, regardless of what else was going on.
Yeah.
I don't know if you came there to look at hogs or Demolition Derby.
You
It didn't
paid
matter.
for the
You were
concert.
paying Alabama. And a piece of the total sales for the day, and he's like, "Hey, it's Alabama. If you want Alabama,
That's what the price.
And they would, a lot of times it would be equally between the gate and merchandise.
Yeah.
If
They sold.
if the gate was 80 grand, they probably sold 80.
That's what I'm saying. They took
made
it over. They were
fortune in merch.
They actually had their own bus just for merch.
Yeah, back when it was
a
a thing.
And instead of it just being ball caps and T-shirts, they purses, hats.
They did the
they
whole deal.
had everything you could imagine had Alabama on it. And that logo
Oh,
became.
yeah.
That logo
wallets,
became.
I had an
huge-
Alabama wallet, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know when I went to Salem, Virginia, and Roanoke to do a live album. One night, I know that their fee was $70,000, and they also sold about $75,000 in merchandise.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it was
Back
like
then, yeah.
So they were-
$150,000 a night.
Wow.
Wow.
But they were also doing like 280 to 300.
I was just thinking what a good thing
Dates.
it was that it was Harold's phone that rang instead of
Yeah,
ours.
I felt so much better about that.
Yeah, me too. I was looking. I immediately looked at mine and I was like, "Oh
Here, give me
God,
that.
I hope that's not me."
I'll turn it off.
He'll turn it muted on the side. Yeah, he got it.
You got it? All right.
He's been muting things since he was going to push the button on
He
it.
was gonna
Says, I
take-
need you to come in.
We
here
got
for
a
just
problem.
minute."
Harold gave me that look like if I wanted it off, I wouldn't have it with
Since
me.
since he was a teenager, he's a teenage mutant.
Ninja Turtle?
Yeah.
Any last words today, Harold?
Man, I've told you everything I know.
Yeah. Can we do the last words today?
You can do it. You can wrap it up.
Wrap it up. I want to just say how. Yeah, you do the sound thing. Okay, Smarty. So we just want to tell you, we've all talked about it behind your back, but it's such a great privilege for us to, after all these years of being in the music business and sometimes struggling, sometimes succeeding, and all that kind of stuff. To know that we've been able to maintain a friendship and the loyalty and the ability to have Harold Shedd as your friend.
Yep.
When you started in the music business in 1980 is a marvelous thing.
No doubt.
To know, to go to bed at night and know, hey, I'm friends with
He's
Harold
my friend.
Shedd. He's my friend. And we really do mean it from the bottom of our hearts.
Yes, we
It's
do.
an incredibly important thing to us, and thanks for having us.
Well, I'm so honored to be here with you guys. I look forward to it, and it's been equally important to me. So I thank all of you,
Thank you.
and I
man.
thank our
Thank you, Harold.
producer and director, Mr.
Mr. Wade.
Mr. Wade.
who has the interest and all to do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we really
I think we're the luckiest guys in town, really.
Yeah.
we
are
are.
today.
We are.
Well, the truth was though is that
You know,
there were so many assholes that were in charge back then, and when finally got to know you, and I was like, he's done more than any of these guys.
Yep.
Yep.
He's not an asshole.
No.
I mean, I'll never forget how that hit me when I really first got to know you, Harold. I was like, it was just because, hell, I'm not going to name names, but I've worked for quite a few assholes.
Got fired by a few too.
Yeah. But it was just always such a pleasure to work on anything we were going to. I don't care if it was hanging platinum records or if it was, coming up to see you in the room to play what I'd found that week, or whether it was going out to lunch. It was always fun.
Yep.
It was always
you made it.
fun.
That was a commitment you had. It had to be fun.
we had a great time.
It had to be
Yep.
fun.
Amen.
And thanks to Russ, too.
And
know?
man, Russ is he's a
What?
trooper.
Well, you kind of
Yeah.
put this,
You're our executive
Hey,
you
producer.
kind of glued this together a little bit.
Russ. Well,
Hardest
when I
working man
left
in
the
showbiz.
mill and went to Mercury, even though we still maintained a really close relationship, but Russ, he made it all work, and that says a lot,
Sure
That's a
does.
big deal.
And he added some people that were really impressive people, successful people.
Yeah.
He was turning out number one songs without me. He was doing it himself.
Well, I mean, we can say that, but I always said, I didn't get any better from the time I left Muscle Shoals, so I came up here. But he put me on the main stage, and everybody had to come past me to be there. So
Yeah.
it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, how can you
know
not be in
exactly
that
what you mean.
environment? You know?
It's pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suffice
But
to say-
all in all, we're all, we were here in the business at the best time
Got the
anybody
the
could
best.
ever,
Absolutely.
could ever be.
Amen.
the sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah, the sweet spot. That's it.
It was a
buddy.
hell of a lot of fun. I
Sure was.
guarantee you. Anybody that didn't have fun back then, they just.
And I'm glad that we all met and we're still friends.
too.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that we met Wade also.
Amen.
It's been great,
Thank
Wade.
you, Wade.
Thank you guys.
Thank you,
And
sir.
here's the deal: you're buying breakfast.
No.
I'll do it. You know I'll do that.
Bob
I
Beckham's-
won't take you to the tit bar, but I'll buy that.
Remember that used to be Beckham's quote all that? Buy breakfast, son. If nobody drinks at breakfast, and it's cheaper.
That's
Then they
exactly
feel like they got to buy you dinner.
That's what Beckham always used to tell me. Buy breakfast.
Great job, guys.
Fun.
Oh, man.
You good?
I mean,
Hey, I love you, brother. I really do.
Am I the only Kentucky Colonel here?
Thanks. I'm coming
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Behind the Shed. Behind the Shed podcast was created by Wade Smith, produced by Russ Zavitson and Wade Smith, recorded at Ace Haggerty's podcast house in Nashville, Tennessee. Camera, audio, video, and editing by Zach Day and Jack Youngblood. Music written and composed by Russ Zavitson. Today's guests were Jason Morris, Chuck Bedwell, Brian Rawlings, Russ Zavitson, Wade Smith, and Harold Shedd. You can contact the show via email at behindtheshedd@gmail.com or visit us on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day and go out and share some stories. Tune in next week as we go Behind the Shed.